This is Father Matthew Kozlowski speaking to you from St. Mary's Episcopal Church in Stuart, Florida. This week in our Bible challenge, we've reached the book of Exodus. And if you're like me, most of what you know about this story comes from a movie, The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. Well, one of the nice things about reading the actual Bible is that not everything showed up in the movie. And so today I have for you 3 things which you might not have known about Exodus. The first one is the Egyptian midwives. These heroes show up in chapter 1 of Exodus when Pharaoh commands them to kill the Hebrew baby boys as they're being born. But the midwives don't do it. And they, this is really interesting, are given the honor of being named. They're called Shiphrah and Puah. Pharaoh, in contrast, is never given a name throughout the whole book of Exodus. Fascinating then that the midwives who choose life and give life are given the honor of names, but Pharaoh who chooses death and brings death is not given a name. Okay, number 2, Moses was not a good public speaker. Well, that doesn't quite match the movie in which Charlton Heston is beautifully eloquent throughout, but in the Bible in chapter 4, Moses is at the burning bush and he says, "God, send somebody else, for I am slow of speech and tongue." Some scholars think this means that Moses had a stutter. Others think that it means he couldn't speak Egyptian very well. But for us, it reminds us that God uses flawed human characters to achieve God's purposes. Even with all of our shortcomings, God can still use us to achieve God's will. Okay, the third one is the plague of frogs. And for that matter, some of the other plagues that didn't show up in the movie. I suppose that was because there are 10 of them and you can't fit them all into the segment. But the frogs and the flies and the gnats, these are really interesting, although it's hard to interpret because we think about the destruction coming upon the Egyptian people. I submit to you that it's really about the theme of reversal. And the theme of reversal is a biblical thread that comes through all of Scripture. The most striking reversal is the cross, an instrument of death and torture being used to achieve universal salvation. So the reversal in Exodus is that the Nile River, which had been the source of all of Egypt's glory. Egypt is the gift of the Nile, deriving water and food and irrigation from the Nile. Well, here with the plagues of frogs and gnats and the Nile turning to blood, the Nile itself has turned against Egypt. This thing which had exalted Egypt is now bringing it to its knees. Not a perfect theological explanation for the plagues. That would take a much longer video, but interesting to see God introducing this biblical theme of reversal through this early set of stories. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for watching, and this is Father Kaz signing off.